From the snow-capped mountains of the west to the cypress swamps of the south and everywhere in between. This is the Southern Flight Podcast. I'm your host, Robbie Nelson. You are listening to the Southern Flight Podcast. I'm Robbie Nelson, and today's guest really doesn't need an introduction. If you're a pretty serious waterfowler, especially in the South, but I mean all over, people know this guy. He's been a waterfowl hunter for, this will be year number 63. We just discussed this. So 1963 was his first year. I would assume that will be longer than most people listening to this have been alive, including myself. I was born in 88, so I'm only 38 years old. So he's got another 20 years duck hunting almost, and I've been alive. But we are speaking today with Mr. Pat Pitt out of Mississippi. Mr. Pat, how you doing today?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Yes, sir. So, guys, for those of you that may not know who Mr. Pitt is, he has been a very serious, dedicated waterfowl hunter, again, for over 60 years. He's traveled the world. If you can think of a bird, he's probably taken it. If you can think of a destination, he's probably been there. Even birds you can't even hunt anymore that were legal in his time in earlier years, he was able to harvest. But that's not really what today's podcast is going to be about. He's done a lot of podcasts. I've listened to a bunch of them. I encourage you guys to look them up and listen to them if you haven't. But today is going to be a little bit more focused on the changes that he has seen in his 63 years of waterfowl hunting. I'm sure there are no shortage of them. I've been waterfowl hunting now for over 20 years myself, and even in the 20 years in my time, it's changed a lot. So I can't imagine the changes that he's seen. Some may be for the good. I think a lot of them are not. We'll let him speak on that. But Mr. Pitt, just maybe take a second and introduce yourself, and we'll go from there.
Well, I started in November of '63 and caught the bug right off. I mean, I grew up in a rural area and following bird dogs or pack of beagles or looking for a squirrel in a hickory tree or whatnot. But when I killed my first duck in 1963, November of '63, Thanksgiving weekend, I believe, I was DOA. I mean, I caught the bug, and it's taken me a lot of places, and I've seen a lot of things, and I've done a lot of things, and I've been fortunate to meet some of the people that I've met and enjoy some of the places I've been to.
Right. Do you remember what that first duck was way back in 1963?
Mallard.
A mallard duck. What was it in Tennessee at the time?
Tennessee, on the Tennessee River. At the time, it was Halesbar Lake, but now it's Nickajack.
Okay.
Because they tore out the old dam since it was on a sand bottom, and they put Nickajack Dam in its place further downstream.
Right.
Yeah.
So
we hunted all the way from Wheeler Reservoir to Watchbar. I mean, we'd follow, we'd find ducks, we'd look for ducks. I mean, things were wide open then. It was just a different day, a different time.
Right. So back then, were you hunting I understand the big lake was public land, but were you able to get on any private ground back then fairly easy, or was it pretty much all public?
Well, I mean, there were some management areas in East Tennessee that, draw system, for geese, ducks. But we never had a problem knocking on the door. Somebody come to the door, say, there's some ducks down there in your pasture field on a pond. Can we go jump them? And, never had a problem on private property. Like I say,
Right.
Things were different. Everybody was held to accountability. I'm talking, if a gate's closed, close it when you go through. Just simple
Right.
common sense things. But we never had a problem on private ground. since that time. Even in Arkansas, when I first came to Arkansas in 1971, gosh, we could find a farmer out in the field or at his house or whatnot and say, "Can we go hunt this rice field off a ditch bank?" And it was like, sure. Now lease money is just totally outrageous over there. Uh, that's one of the most graphic changes I've seen is what it used to take and what it does now.
So I'd say that'd probably be a good starting point to jump in on the change. So it sounds like when you were a young man getting going, obviously there was no social media, there was no internet. That was predating all this stuff. And if you look at what they say historically, the hunter numbers, quote unquote, I think they say were more back then. There was more federal duck stamps sold in those days. Maybe that was in the 70s was the peak. You probably can speak on that better than I can. But they say since then it's kind of gone downhill. But do you feel like there were more people duck hunting then, like they say, or do you feel like there was less people duck hunting then?
Personally, we rarely ever ran into somebody else duck hunting on the Tennessee River. I mean,
Right.
if you went looking for them, you could find them because they were looking in the same areas that we have been.
Right.
North Alabama started getting a little crowded in the 70s because they had, impoundments with, get this, corn, milo, that were flooded. Tennessee, the management areas did the same thing. So, this flooded corn's not anything new.
Right.
People,
So you were saying you were seeing flooded corn in the 70s?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Milo
Okay.
probably was the staple because it was easier to plant and it produced more seed heads, seed pods. But yeah, some of the good management areas, and I'm not talking about Horicon size management areas, I'm talking Candy's Creek, Yellow Creek, and some of the places people have never heard of. But they had a good population of ducks. We used to get, it was something in the early 60s to kill a mallard, but boy, we had the black ducks. Black ducks and wood ducks and a few mallards were our staple at that time. The little refuge 30 minutes from my mom and dad's house would winter 10,000 Canadas. And I'm not talking about city park Canadas, I'm talking migrant birds. Wheeler
Right.
Refuge down south of us would winter, gosh, I don't know what their big totals were, but it was well over what we had in East Tennessee. Hell, the first Canada goose I ever killed in East Tennessee had a Jack Miner band on it. And I thought, well,
No
this is
kidding.
cool. Who's he? So I started doing research. And at that time, you had to write letters or make an expensive phone call where they charged you by the minute. But, it just, there's so many things that happened at an early age that I didn't appreciate at the time, but I do now.
I feel like that's the case with I can't speak for everybody, but I feel like things are always better in retrospect. I'll even go on a hunt myself and you don't really truly appreciate it till you get back and you're back at work and you're like, man, that was a pretty good hunt or a pretty good day. And at the time it may have just seemed like, you're just going through the motions. It was another day, but it always seems like when you're looking back on stuff like that, it's always a little bit better.
Well, thinking about it, there again, going back, I lost friends in Vietnam. I lost friends in boating accidents. Uh, it was something we were country folks, okay? My granddaddy'd give me a handful of 22 shells and he'd expect a squirrel per shell. Uh, but we hunted to supplement the fat back in the beans, for meat on the table.
Right.
I mean, it was just a different thing. Nothing was wasted. And you can't tell me that all the snow geese that are getting killed, all these big pile pictures you see, uh, are for subsistence. They just, it's not subsistence hunting. It's just pile hunting. And uh, I've been there. Everybody that's fired a gun has been there. But I just wish today's generation could see what it was like to go to the Army surplus store to buy OD green wool jackets and shirts and canvas waders and shooting Model 12 heavy duck guns or A5 Brownings. Uh, this was before 870s became popular. And, that was, we'd reload shells at night so we could hunt the next day.
How about that?
We'd save our hulls, and of course, I'd put them in my mama's oven at about 200 degrees to make sure all the moisture was out of them before I'd reload them.
How about that?
But I can remember a lot of times, of course, you could buy a bag of shot for $5. We'd buy 12-pound kegs of powder, and 4 or 5 of us that hunted together would load shells. I mean, that was our sitting around a campfire type thing. We'd be in the basement loading shells because we couldn't afford $5 a box shotgun shells.
Right.
The heavy loads. I've still got some old boxes of shells where 2 3/4 inch magnums were like $3 and something.
Right.
But we could load a lot of shells for $3 and something.
Okay.
Shots $30-something a bag now.
Oh, it's crazy. Everything's crazy expensive now. It's I'm sitting in my sign shop right now where I make signs for a living, and pieces of metal that sold for $30 just 4 or 5 years ago, I'm now paying $125, $130 for them, and it's not going down. I mean, even before gas prices and all that went back up, when everything came down, it's like, okay, crisis is over, but the prices seem to, like, once they get inflated like that, it doesn't ever seem to really go back the other way. It might get stagnant, but it's pretty wild. It's hard to make a living. I can tell you that, and it's not just my industry. That's just across the board with everybody.
Well, I mean, I do taxidermy and eyes that I used to buy for $1 a pair out of Europe, some of the best in the world. They're $6, $7, $8 a pair now.
Yeah, I mean, 600, 700% increase.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, of course, there's so many new things in taxidermy. It's graduated to where, from what it used to be using arsenic inside a skin to the new age of taxidermy with artificial bodies and heads and necks and feet, and paint by the numbers. But you got to know what you're doing. Not everybody can be a Shane Smith or a John Beard or somebody like that when it comes to taxidermy work. But and my first trip to Alaska, my taxidermy bill cost more than my trip did.
I believe it. Roughly what year do you think that was?
My first trip to Alaska was in 1979.
79.
I was up there in
Now,
79, 81, 83, and 85. I went every other year for 4 years. I think I've been up there 9 or 10 times now.
So back in those days, that first trip, do you remember what part of Alaska you hunted?
Yeah. We're going to spend the majority of the time down on the Kenai Peninsula near Homer.
Okay.
But I had met Dr. Andrews that summer, who was a friend of Nash Buckingham's, and that's a whole new story of the times that I had with him hunting at Beaver Dam and everything else, shooting bow whoop too, but the first bird I sat in Dr. Andrews' basement that I watched him mount was an emperor goose. And I'm like, gee, I got to have one of those. So Gail and I flew to Anchorage, and I said, wait right here. I'm going to fly out to Coal Bay and shoot me an emperor goose, and I'll be back in 2 days. Well, a storm set in out there, and I was out there for almost a week. Couldn't get out. But the, Gail, she's the most level-headed woman on the face of the earth. I left my Chesapeake with her that I flew up there to hunt down on the Kenai Peninsula with the McBrides out of Homer, and I knew she was in good hands because Jake wasn't going to let anybody get near her. So, but yeah, I came back with 17 species or 17 birds to mount. I mean, I had duplicate. You can't mount just one. Like you can't have just one baseball card. I had that discussion with a federal agent one time as to why would you want more than one harlequin duck or whatever. I said, well, for the simple reason that one, I can, and two, I want to look at more than just the one. So, I brought back all 3 species of scoters, old squaws, emperor geese, 2 species of mergansers, harlequin ducks, even brought back a mallard that I killed up there just so I can say I had one from there.
But, right.
In ptarmigan, I mean, we just had brought back some salmon that I had mounted. We came off, there was 4 of us the second time I went up there in 81. I was by myself in 79 with Gail, but there was 4 of us that flew into Coal Bay and then went inland to stay at Don Johnson's camp. And if you've ever read the book King of the Ice, if you haven't read it, you need to read it because he was something, a bush pilot. And but we stayed there, and he would fly us to the coast during the day. Emperor geese, the limit was 5, possession 15. Harlequin ducks were separate than sea ducks. You could kill 15 a day. You could kill 15 sea ducks. That includes, if you wanted to, 15 Stellar's adders, 7 game ducks, which were your golden eyes and both common and barrows. The limits were just, gosh, you could kill 37 ducks a day legally.
Like you said, different time.
Oh yeah, all of it's changed. But in 81, I had some friends. Frank Newmeyer was one of them. He's a taxidermist that he probably, the habitat cases and whatnot, he probably was the one that got that started. He started doing dioramas and whatnot. But we came off the peninsula. There was 4 of us that were hunting, and Gail had gone, and we were 800 pounds overweight.
800 pounds overweight.
We had coolers that you could bury a small child in that took 2 of us to pick up. I mean,
I'd hate to know what that flight bill was.
Well, I'm glad it wasn't just this day and time. Gail even had a couple of birds in her purse because we ran out of room.
She sounds like a trooper, Mr. Pitt. A couple harlequin ducks in her purse?
Yeah. Well, like I say, she's a good sport. But everything was fine basically until 9/11. All right. You didn't have a problem. You didn't get hassled with shotguns and ammo and this, that, and the other. I mean, 9/11 really put a crimp in a lot of things. But I mean, that's fast forward quite a ways from where I was back then.
Hey, before we move on, I want to talk about something I thought about. You were talking about the snow geese and a lot of them that you thought probably got wasted. Didn't Texas was the first one to cut out the conservation season for them, weren't they?
Yes, and I just heard New York has.
Well,
Uh,
that's where I was going next. I have heard whispers that the Atlantic Flyway is going to do away with it because the greater population of snow geese is, obviously a separate population, and they're not doing as well. So I hear. I've only hunted them one time, and it was in New Jersey, but I hear that the Atlantic Flyway is doing away with it.
well, the lesser snow goose population is down, um, from what I'm reading, and God has a way of doing things to balance things, just like the lemmings going to the sea. All right, now the snow geese get down in our area, in HPAI, the highly pathogenic avian influenza, we'll pick up hundreds in a week out of our rice fields. That you'll see them out there in the field with their head wobbling around, and next morning they're dead. I mean, picking up hundreds out there, and I mean, he's handling the conservation season a lot better than a lot of people. But the the big snow goose spreads with 20, 30 guns in it, they're not hunting, they're shooting. I mean, every video you look at, they got an extension and they're just spraying and it's like a machine gun. They're just spraying and praying, and everybody's running out there flipping birds looking for a band, and uh, it's not it's not what the resource deserves. Uh,
Right.
nobody
Do
nobody
you
seems to appreciate the resource.
right? Do you think that is it? I don't want to put words in your mouth, so I'm just going to ask you. Do you agree with the conservation season moving forward now? And I know this is totally opinionated at this point, but I'm just curious your thoughts on it, or would you like to see it just shut down completely?
I'd like to see it go away, and here's the reason: it's not for the all the snow geese that are getting killed. And trust me, we find them thrown in ditches and piles that they weren't utilized. It's not of that. It's the fact that from September, when teal season and early Canada season opens, until April, there's gunfire somewhere. And in our part of Arkansas, they have an early spec season. It goes right into waterfowl season and right into conservation season. And it puts so much pressure on the birds. It makes them jumpy. It makes them nervous. It makes them to where they're going places that they've never been before. And it just adds so much pressure to the birds. Our birds are nocturnal before the season opens for the most part because of the
They've just learned.
yeah. Well, I mean, if you're trying to eat breakfast and they're having a fireworks display next door, it's you're gonna go to somewhere else. I mean, it's just that
Fair
simple. But
enough.
uh, you know, it's it's becoming, and I'm not saying everybody. I'm not trying to stereotype the whole waterfowl fraternity. I'm saying there are many, many people that all they care about is numbers. All they care about is numbers. They want the limit. And if they have to shoot a hen mallard or two to have a limit, they will. And nobody on the face of the earth this day and time needs a hen mallard or a hen pintail to subsist on. I mean, you can't argue that fact. It's just
Right.
not.
Right.
It doesn't hold water. I ride roughshod on the guys at my club. A hen mallard, a hen pintail costs them $20, and if they do it on purpose with me in the pit with them, they get an ass chewing to go with it.
Right.
So we're not planning for the future. Okay, the majority of waterfowl hunters have never hunted a single season that wasn't a liberal season. Okay,
I'm one of them.
I've
I'm
caught,
one of them.
well, I'm not blaming you. You've had, the good times for sure. But I've gone from the three ducks, one mallard limit with no canvasbacks. I mean, just to through the farcical point system days. I see people all the time on some of these websites saying, well, we need to bring back a point system. Point system was it was the biggest farce that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife ever came up with. The honor system. It's like having a bowl of candy out there on Halloween night and expecting everybody to come take a piece of candy. Well, kids will dump the whole bowl in their bag and walk off. I mean, that's about as simple as I can put it. But, the point system turned, I'm not going to say everybody, but I'm going to say the majority of people into illegal hunters. And the reason I say that, I don't know if you've heard of Dave Hall or not. He's passed away now. He was a U.S. Fish and Wildlife agent in Louisiana. He started the Poachers to Preachers, recruiting Ace Cullum, Phil Robertson, me, and a whole slew of people to give talks to the flyway biologists about the illegal harvest, to just a myriad of things, to raise money for a helicopter to help patrol the Louisiana coast. Dave Hall told me that he never, and I don't mean seldom, I mean never, checked a waterfowl hunter that did not have the high point bird, whether it be a mallard hen or a canvasback or a black duck, as their last bird. It was always the last bird they killed that put them over 2 or over 100 points.
So I understand how the point system works, but I'm gonna tell you or how it worked. But a lot of people listening to this don't understand what you mean by what you just said. Can you elaborate what the high point duck is, and what the difference in shooting the high point duck your first duck of the day versus your last duck of the day is, so people on here that didn't live through those days or don't know can understand what you mean?
Well, the way it worked is when you reach or exceed 100 points with your last bird, you were done. So if you killed a canvasback first light, theoretically you were done. If you killed a mallard hen or a black duck, and they were, depending on which flyway, they were either 70 points or 90 points. I know on our flyway they were 90. They changed it up, but you're sitting there looking at a canvasback laying there. Well, I'm through, but all these pintails and widgeon are flying around. So I'm going to shoot 9 of them, which gives me 90 points, and then I'm going to put this canvasback on the end, which puts me over. So I'm legal. Okay? So you could kill 10 pintails, 10 scalp, and look what shape scalp are in right now. You could kill 10 widgeon, any of the teal, 10. Ringneck ducks were 35 for some reason. I don't even remember. They didn't even count mergansers. They were sawbills. So, but mallard, black ducks, wood ducks were, I believe, 70. Redheads were 2. Like I say, each flyway was a little bit different. But I mean, you go out and two wood ducks, you're done.
Right.
You go out and shoot 2 mallard hens, you're done. Mallard drakes they started out as 35 pointers, and I remember the central flyway, they were 25, okay? But the 10-point pintails just got beat to death. I mean, I'm not sure what the population was with pintails. It was 7, 8 million maybe. And, now they're down to 3 something, I guess. And they don't bounce back as quick as, say, a mallard does. But Fish and Wildlife, again, and I've talked to some biologists with Ducks Unlimited, and they explained it to me, but I don't buy it. They gave us 3 pintails this year and didn't put a hen restriction on, like 3 pintails, 1 hen, like 4 mallards, 2 hens. Okay?
Right.
One of the comments I got from somebody in the industry was, well, people are going to target the drakes because they're easier to pick out. You cannot tell me that 5 guys in a pit or a blind are going to get a flock of pintails in and do their dead level best to wipe a sky clean. All right.
Right.
Because it gives them their limit. It gives them a bigger pile on their tailgate than the guy down the road. Uh, you give somebody an inch, they take a mile. I've been guilty of it myself. I'll admit. Uh, you know, I had a minor in math. I could add up ducks real quick. When we were in a pit. I mean, it just, but it just gave us a free rein to kill more ducks. Now, granted, we were targeting mallard drakes. The majority of us that hunted together, mallard drakes, pintail drakes, but it was a free for all on the teal. And group bagging has become a thing. I mean, just all the guys you see videos of, nobody quits when there's your 6 ducks. Well, we still lack 4 more. You don't see one person stand up and shoot his last one. I don't.
Right. Right.
And I've asked game wardens in Arkansas, gosh, they were checking us religiously on the early spec season with my grandkids out there, and they learned a lot from that. But I asked them about it. I said, y'all not enforce group bagging? I mean, some of these guide service, they'll have 30, 40. I got a picture of 61 guys all
You
lined
sent me
up
that picture.
with their hero shot and all the geese laying out there in front of them. And I asked one of the game wardens, I said, does group bagging not get enforced anymore? I mean, we get down to where we need 1 or 2 birds or 3 or 4 birds. I mean, all right, this one's yours, Stephen. This one's yours, Patrick. I'm done. I killed my 2 specks or my 3 specks when it was. I'd rather watch my grandson and granddaughter kill their birds than me shoot one. I've killed my share.
Right.
But as social media has been the ruination of a lot of people's thinking, you've got websites, like Band Hunters and all this sort of thing. I mean, it seemed like every other post somebody killed a banded Canada goose. Well, gosh, resident Canada's, in some areas, if you kill one, it's not banded, it's unusual. It's pretty much
Right.
like shooting a family milk cow. But it gives people hero status. I know people that'll go into restaurants in places like Tunica, Mississippi, Harrisburg, Arkansas, and before they get out of their truck, they'll reach up and get their lanyard with all the bands on it and put it on so they can walk in there with their chest poked out. I can't wear all the bands I've got on a lanyard. I wouldn't be able to walk upright, but I've been lucky.
I feel like I saw a social media
Always
post from
have
one of
been.
your sons. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off there. I feel like I saw a social media post one time, one of your sons, I don't remember if it was Patrick or I don't remember which one it was, talking about the luck that you have with bands is just unlike anything they've ever seen.
I've been lucky, and luck is, and I'm talking about migrant birds. You've got to be in the right place at the right time, but there's a certain amount of luck. I've sat side by side with both my sons, and 2 greenheads come in, and we shoot where we stand. I kill mine, he kills his. Mine's banded, his not. It's happened with geese. It's happened with all kinds of things. I mean, it just happens.
Right.
But I get a absolute thrill over watching one of my sons, or my grandson especially. My grandson Reed, Stephen's son, the first greenhead he ever killed was banded,
How about
and
that?
the first greenhead I ever killed was banded. So this year I killed another banded greenhead, and we're looking at the band reports. Mine was banded 4 days after his was 2 years prior to the one I killed this year. Same place, same bander, Plumas, Manitoba. So the boys and I got to looking. We've got a half dozen or so bands from that same band site. I even found one in the dirt in one of our fields when I was getting some habitat for some cases to put some ducks in. I found a band. It was from Plumas. Uh,
How about that?
that's what just gets me, the history, the amazing, excuse me, number of miles they fly. Uh, you never, you can't stop to think how many gauntlets they've run to get from point A to point B and point B to point A and back. I mean, it just, I killed a brant in Mexico that was banded in the Canadian Arctic, okay? Which means brant don't fly over land, they follow the coast. This bird followed the coast all the way around the tip of Alaska, came all the way down to Mexico, Obregon, Mexico, and I think Patrick did some of the math and whatnot. It's over 3,000 miles it traveled. And that bird was 19 years old. Now, think about how many miles that bird's logged. That's the fascinating part about it.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not,
And that's also just if that bird took a straight line path around the coast, it stopped and fed and flew. I mean, that just those, if it made that same trip 19 times, I mean, that's what, 60,000 miles almost just one way. So 120,000 miles if you think about back and forth in the spring migration and winter, fall migration. You also touched on something a minute ago that made me think. You said that the bands that you killed at your club, including one that you found years apart, all from the same place, coming to the same property, your property, which goes to show how birds imprint on areas too.
Imprinting. These two, we were hunting. Reed killed his. We were hunting Chris Aiken's lodge, Red Legs over there, right there on the Jackson County line in Arkansas. And Reed killed his. And the one I killed this year was quarter mile, maybe a half mile from where that one was killed. Okay. And then we got to looking at some timber that Chris also has probably 3-4 miles away. One of the birds that we killed 3-4 years ago, it was from Plumas. So that's another factor. Mallard drakes are going to follow the hens. I mean, but the hens that imprint, they're going to do their dead level best to bring their brood back to that X every year. The gosh, don't get me started on oboe ducks, but when they came out, Arkansas, the biologist in Arkansas, 99, 2000, thereabouts, estimated that 40% of the super hens were killed in Arkansas. Now, what's a super hen? A super hen, one that is imprinted on the Arkansas prairie, and she comes there every year, and she brings her brood, and her brood reproduce and bring their brood. I mean, it doesn't take a mathematician to figure out how many thousands of ducks we're talking about once they multiply and multiply. But once they're killed off, they're not coming. And I know there's an argument where, well, killing hens doesn't really affect the population. Maybe not. But I've never seen a dead hen lay another egg. It's absolutely physically, biologically impossible.
That's a fair statement.
So, well, there again, I don't need that hen mallard to cook for supper. All right. The drakes taste the same. And then I get the argument from people, well, if you kill all the drakes, they won't be able to breed the hens. Well, pintails especially, drakes outnumber the hens 3-1, and mallards are pretty close to that. All right. So there's always going to be a larger population of drakes than there are hens, because, and I'm going to tell you, I read a lot of studies, all right? In one study I read probably 20 years ago about mortality on the nesting ground. A red fox vixen was monitored up on the Canadian prairie or the Dakotas or wherever was monitored, and she was taking an average of 14 ducks a week to feed her kids. All right.
Mm.
You want to guess the sex of the 14 ducks that she was taking?
Had to
Hen
be all the
ducks.
hens laying sitting on the nest.
Getting them on the nest. And foxes are, they're great. And of course, they were getting them at night too when they're in there all tucked in. But 14, that's one fox. All right. Think about how many foxes they are running, and coons and skunks and everything else. My oldest son, Patrick, worked for Delta Waterfowl for 2 summers up in the Dakotas for doing studies on predator control. Okay. I mean, they had areas that were trapped that was getting 70 to 80% nest success. And then they had areas that weren't trapped, they were getting 2%. All right. So you add up all the hens killed by hunters, the hens killed by foxes, or coons, or skunks, or the eggs destroyed. Same thing's happening with turkeys. Okay. The kids that used to trap before school to make spending money, there's not as many trappers now as there were. And the coons are just absolutely prolific. And they'll target these turkey nests, everything from a wild hog to a skunk or whatnot. Will eat a turkey egg. It ain't a duck, but you get the picture. Predators are really out of control, and I applaud the work that's being done in predator control by Delta, for instance. I know Patrick spent 2 summers up there. They were monitoring nests just about daily, and the birds that they'd come to a nest and there'd be nothing but broken eggshells and some feathers there where the hen had been gotten. So there's a lot of factors that go in to opening day of duck season, load your gun, pull the trigger. It's not that simple. It's just like
Right.
everybody that duck hunts, you know, a month before the season opens, we're getting pits cleaned out, decoys moved, all this. You know, and somebody shows up a day before the season, like, hey, where are we hunting? Well, where were you? There's a lot of work to be done to go hunting. There's a lot of work to be done to produce ducks for us to hunt. All right. As much as nobody likes to duck hunt any more than I do. Some people like to hunt as much, but nobody likes to hunt any more than I do. I would give up 20 days for the season to be shortened. I think days kills ducks, not limits. Okay. So I would love to see the ducks get more rest, to get less pressured, to go back north fatter than they are this day and time. And people can complain all they want about, these big clubs, and, you see hot crop and all this business. They're providing habitat to perpetuate the species just in their little biome, okay? They may have 100 acres. And I'm going to go back. Chris Aiken is one of my best friends. And they've got 600 acres of heaven over in Arkansas with a big cypress brake that they hunt. They've got a 100-acre field that they plant in rice and milo. They never fire a shot there. And Chris's mentality is, we're going to hunt the interest. We're not going to hunt the principle. And you think about that, all right? They're going to let the nucleus sit there, all right? The ones that get out and about and whatnot that we call into our decoys, they're going to get themselves killed. But we're not hurting the nucleus. And every place from Habitat Flats to Straight Lake to White Oak Duck Woods to Redlegs Lodge, all this. Yeah, these people have it made as far as killing ducks and having a place to hunt, but they put a lot of work into it to have that, and they give back.
And
What's
they're also feeding a lot of ducks that are going to go back north that are not going to get killed too, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, gosh, when Ducks Unlimited did a show with Stephen and Reed and I over there at Chris's, actually standing out there at night and watching these ducks come into this rice field. I'm talking they almost splashing water on you standing in the driveway. And even Reed at 9 years old at the time, he's saying he realizes that these ducks are the future, not the ones hanging on the duck straps or whatnot, but the majority of these ducks that he's seeing that aren't dead are what is going to be for the future. So, every little bit helps. Of course, license sales and whatnot, they're down. Duck stamp numbers are down. I think everybody that goes on a federal or even a state refuge to take a picture or to look at the pretty ducks with their binoculars or, to look at a marsh wren, and say, ooh, I'll put that on my life list and whatnot. Everybody that sets foot on a refuge should buy a duck stamp, should be required to buy one. Okay?
I agree.
If they were $100 a piece, I'd still buy 2 of them like I do every year. So
Right. Yeah, you talk about the state of Utah, I believe. I go out there and hunt every year, and a friend of mine, Chad Yamani, he's the regional director for DU out there. And I was reading an article, and I don't remember if it was this year they passed it or if it was last year. I have to ask him. But I read an article to where even their state WMAs, you have to buy a hunting license to be able to go on those refuges, because all the bird watchers, man, I've been there. You'll go out there to try to hunt, and hell, you can't hardly go to get your boat in the water or anything for all the guys with the camera lenses, and which is fine. I mean, there's not knocking them. I love to watch the birds too, but these guys aren't paying anything in to keep that WMA up. Where all the duck hunters that are coming in are the ones footing the bill for all these other guys. And I mean, they're coming in and after hard rains and damaging the roads just like everybody else, and all that stuff costs money. And the dikes keeping up with them costs money. And as you know, waterfowl, I think, is one of the most expensive things as far as habitat wise, because it costs a lot of money, especially out there in a desert state, but it costs a lot of money to move water and it costs a lot of money to hold water. So a public place like that, anybody that's utilizing that, whether you're shooting the duck or not, I think it's a step in the right direction, making those guys pay. I'm not hating on them. If you want to be a bird lover and a bird watcher, that's great, but pay your fair share just like the rest of us do if we're all using the same land.
You got to pay to play. It's just that simple. This year, Arkansas was the driest year we've had since 1938. Okay. We did not get measurable rains from December 1st to the end of January. It kept missing us, north of us, south of us. Consequently, the ducks were packed tighter. The ones that stayed that didn't overfly us, they were more vulnerable. They responded to pressure a lot more than we ever thought they would. Clay pools, everybody's been to Arkansas or clay pools did not get their woods flooded until Christmas. Wow. Because water was a premium. We sucked the Langell River dry trying to get water in our fields, and we just got marginal water at that. And we never did get any rain to top it off. And then, toward the end of January, we had a foot of snow and single-digit temperatures. that that just made it tough. I've hunted, like I say, I've hunted since '63. This is the worst season I've ever had, and not just because of I still killed ducks, okay, but this was the worst season I've ever had as far as conditions, habitat, bird movement. We normally get a turnover of ducks every 3 to 5 days in our area. We knew most of them by name by Christmas time. I mean, we were seeing the same flocks of birds. I swear we were. They were working the same corner of a field that they'd never been in before. You know, they were flying all the way to the Mississippi River or all the way to South Arkansas. One uh, duck, one mallard that had a tracker on it, and she was staying at the Byers Farm down there near Wynn, which is another big holding. She was flying to southern Missouri every evening and coming back at first light.
Roughly how far is that?
Round trip, a straight line is probably 300 plus, maybe 350 miles.
She was doing that every day?
Yeah. I know they
Wow.
monitored her doing that for 5 or 6 days in a row before she went somewhere else. But
wow,
they're doing a lot of uh, studies with geo trackers and backpack transmitters, and I've helped put them on ducks, and we trapped at the Byers Farm, and we're doing white-fronted geese and mallard hens, but they wanted mallard hens that were a certain weight. They were wanting mallard hens that were mature because if the mallard hens have the weight, that means they're most likely to be able to make it through unless they get shot, to be able to go back north. Okay, so
let me let me ask you this: since we're on the subject of mallards and survival rates and all this, I hunt the prairies every year, above the border up there in Canada, and it's definitely been drier and drier and drier, just about every year up there. And I know that they say that that is the biggest driver in duck populations is had um, the condition that the breeding grounds are in. So with it being drier every year and the farmers or the equipment's getting better and they're tiling and draining these temporary potholes when they're dried up. So I don't know if they'll ever come back, when the rain shows back up. But with the populations kind of steadily been dwindling down over the last few years, according to the counts, especially on the mallards, how do you feel? I mean, do you feel like over your course of your hunting history, I know you've seen ups and downs in numbers. Do you suspect that that will come back once we get some wet years, or do you think the carrying capacity and the habitat loss is going to be so great that we're never going to see those highs again?
well, understand two things. We duck hunt as a hobby. Farmers farm as a way of life. It's not a hobby for them to pour money into the ground to try to get 180 bushels of rice per acre or whatever. Plowing up these potholes, I really can't blame them. They own the land, okay? They got to feed their family. It's taken more and more to produce less and less, so to speak, because of commodity prices. Uh, a farmer's like a riverboat gambler. I mean, this year it really hurt. There was a bunch. We had the wettest early spring we've ever had. There was probably up and down the Cache River tens of thousands of acres that did not get planted. Okay, so there wasn't anything out there for the ducks except cuckleburrs and ragweed. Uh, but these farmers, a lot of them, you see auctions all the time. They're auctioning off all their equipment. They're walking away from it. Uh, I know a lot of farmers that have quit because all they're doing is just trying to break even, and that's no way to live. Uh, and I sympathize with them. I got some good friends that are farmers. Their fathers were farmers. Their grandfathers were farmers. And, you know, I can't see getting up in the morning to just try to go break even. I mean, it's hard on
Right.
them. It really is. And, uh, but I think once they plow a pothole up there and drag a land plane through it or whatever they do, I don't think it's going to come back. All right.
Right.
In a perfect world, you would hope it would, but I don't think. I think once it's gone, it's gone. It's just like
Right.
once it's once they put a $5 bill on a gallon of gas, it's going to be a long time before it gets back to where the average guy is not spending a paycheck filling up his 3/4 ton pickup truck.
Right. Right.
It's sad in a way that we're seeing. I keep thinking that I'm seeing the end of an era as far as waterfowl hunting goes. I mean, it's not going to go away, but for the future, for my grandkids and even my sons, they're just in their 40s. Now, they've seen some things that a lot of people hadn't seen as far as duck numbers and whatnot, but I don't think anybody's going to see the number of ducks that I've seen, even when it was a 3 duck limit. Good Lord, we had plenty of ducks. But you could expect snow in November and birds being down here. I think that some of the early counts, and I'm talking, let's say 20 years ago, I think there was birds that were miscounted. I think that we're hunting to an extent paper ducks, okay? And this is just me, and I argue with people about it all the time because I like to argue. Ask Patrick. He and I are real good at arguing with each other. But uh, I think we're hunting paper ducks. I think the counts were screwed up way back when they said we had 15,000 or 15 million mallards or whatever it was. Pick a number because everybody's going to give you a different one. And I tell them, I said, how do you count something that doesn't hold still? I said, walk outside and find a fair ant mound and kick it and try to count them. You can't do it. All right. So a lot of it is formulas. Okay. We've got 100 ponds and there's a Drake mallard on each pond, and it's got a hen that's going to produce 8 to 12 young and whatnot. It doesn't, I don't think it works that way. There again, I'm not the big dogs in DU and Delta, but I think a lot of it, in my mind, is just common sense. Uh, there again, I think we're hunting paper ducks. They're, and I'm sure people going to say, "Yeah, he's crazy and he's old and forgetful," but I am. But I've seen it. I bought the hat and the T-shirt, and I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the internet has there's 3 things that have ruined duck hunting. I think robo ducks, the internet, and hunters that don't appreciate the resource. Okay, because when I first started traveling, Gail can tell you, I'd write a letter and I'd run out to the mailbox every day to see if I got a reply about going to hunt this or going to hunt that. I can remember my mom and dad, they'd get a phone bill where I had a $10 phone call to somewhere in East Jerusalem, talking to a guy about, hey, I want to, come up there and hunt so I can kill let's just say a Ross goose or whatnot. Anything that I didn't have. But now you sit there on the internet and just type up somebody's name that you've seen in a story on one of the sites about waterfowl hunting or turkey hunting or fishing or whatever. And I mean, you're hooked up in a day's time, most time. It's
Right,
not,
right.
it's easy. It's easy now compared to where I was. We didn't have Gore-Tex, Thinsulate. We didn't have thermocells. We didn't have, all the nuances we have now. Don't get me wrong. I like them. I mean, I don't have to wear OD wool that when it gets wet, it weighs 100 pounds, but it'll still keep me halfway warm. I
Right.
have to wear canvas waders that once you get water on them and it freezes, you can't bend over. It just, everything's changed, and there's been some great progress as far as making it comfortable. My kids, golly, they didn't have all the warm clothes when they first started. I can remember Patrick out in Texas in the Panhandle. We were hunting out there, and that wind was blowing. The only thing between us and Alberta was a 4-strand barbed wire fence, and that wind was just cutting through there. And we piled geese up on top of it to help him stay warm out there when he was 4 or 5 years old. Have to adapt sometimes, but
That's right.
I think it
So
made
in Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I think it made them tough. I mean, I kept telling them, I always told them, I said, cold is a state of mind. If you think you're cold, you're going to get colder. All right. So I fed that to them until they got old enough not to believe it. But,
So would you say I heard you say that you felt like back in the 3 duck days that the population would there was still a lot of ducks around. Again, you've been waterfowl hunting for over 60 years. So I don't want to say just an opinion. I mean, you lived it. Do you think that there are a lot less ducks in general now than what there was in the 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s? Or do you think they're just not migrating like they were, or a combination of both?
well, we've got ducks that have figured it out. All right. To quote Clint Eastwood, you got to adapt, you got to overcome. Okay. They've
Right.
learned that they don't have to fly to a McDonald's in southern Louisiana when there's one as soon as you cross the border in Minnesota. And as long as they've got open water and a dry field to feed in, there's no reason for them to come north. I've got a good friend that bands up in Thunder Bay, Ontario. He banded duck. He's still banding ducks because it never froze up and they never left. All right. A lot of our birds, I don't think, came out of Canada. They've learned that as long as they've got open water somewhere, whether it be a river or a hot spring or a hydroelectric plant, they don't need to come down. And then here's another monkey wrench to throw in the mix. Atlantic Flyway is a perfect example, but we're seeing it on the Mississippi Flyway too, is all these release mallards.
I'm glad you brought that up.
They have no idea where Canada is or Arkansas is. And they just go where the wind blows them. If they hook up with a wild duck, they'll follow it to wherever it's going. They'll follow it to wherever it comes back till somebody shoots it. And it's running. They don't have a GPS. It's running the genetics of wild migratory waterfowl.
Right.
A friend of mine that one of my best friends from back home, his son he worked with Delta, and I got him introduced to him at Delta, and he's got his master's degree studying black ducks on the North Carolina coast. Actually, there's a breeding population there, whether you know it or not. But his wife, she did hers on the influx of domestic ducks with the Atlantic Flyway population of mallards. But there's so many of them on the Great Lakes now that that are polluting the gene pool. You can't open up any of the sites on waterfowl hunting somewhere and somebody's got a dock duck there that looks kind of like a mallard. I mean, the gene pool is just getting totally polluted with these Easter ducks that are being bought and turned loose on the duck pond. Our Arkansas banned released mallards a long time ago because some people were setting up shooting preserves with released mallards, and they stopped it. Okay, because
I wish. Oh, I'm sorry.
South Carolina Waterfowl Association, they may be your best friend, and we've killed some of their ducks in our part
They're
of
not
the
my
world.
best friend.
Well, Remington Farms on the East Coast, they may have been the first to start releasing mallards. I've hunted up there on some private, excuse me, on some private property, and every pond we went to had a bunch of tamies, is what they called them, on it. All right, and it's like you see ducks up high coming in, they're wild birds. You see ducks flying like divers 20 feet off the ground, they're tame ducks. You can shoot all of those you want because they were toe clipped or had a band on them or whatever. I got a box full of bands off those things that are just totally worthless as far as I'm concerned. But that's another faction that's hurting the waterfowl population. They may be more ducks now, but they're not ducks that are flying from Saskatchewan to the Louisiana coast. Louisiana's screaming because they're not getting mallards that they used to. I just saw where Saskatchewan is fixing to start limiting alien hunters, Americans coming in up there with 2 5-day license, something. I don't know what it is, but
It's 2 5-day licenses.
Yeah.
That's where I go every year, and if you look at their reasoning behind it, they say that they're trying to stop illegal guiding. I have mixed feelings about this. I don't know how you feel about it, but I tend to think that it's a lot of a greedy American outfitters that have moved in to the Canadian. If you look at the majority of the outfitters in Canada for waterfowl are American owned, and so it's not the Canadians complaining about the Americans. It's the American outfitters that have gone to Canada, and then they complain about the freelancers coming up and it hurting. It's all about protecting the resource and this and that. No, it's not, because 3 or 4 guys going up, 4 or 5 guys, 6, 7 guys going up and hunting for 7 to 10 days or whatever it is, freelancing, are killing way less ducks than an outfitter up there that's got 2 or 3 different groups going out every day that are 8 to 10 strong for the entire season. Now, I'm pretty passionate about this topic because it just gripes my ass if I'm being real honest with you, because if it was about the protecting the resource, they would limit the number of hunters that guides could run through there, but they're not doing that. They're limiting the freelancers. The guides have to be killing way more ducks than the freelancers are, in my opinion, but we could go down a rabbit hole a mile long about that.
Well, a guide's not going to carry out 2 guys. They're going to have 6 to 8 in layout blinds or panel blinds or whatever. And
exactly,
they got enough robo ducks going to look like a wind farm, and a flock of mallards come in that have never seen a decoy in their life. I mean, they're reining them out of there. And I talked to somebody, and I can't remember who he was, but he goes to Canada every year, and some guide he was hunting with or familiar with was running 6 or 8 parties a day with 6
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but they, in 2 months, they were killing way up in the 5 figures of ducks in 2 months. I mean,
Right.
how many of them get
But it's
brought
the
back?
freedom. Well, you're exactly right, and we could talk a little bit about that if you want to. I think that some of the laws, and I talked about this on another podcast with a guy, but some of these like possession limit laws are dated in my mind and need to be revisited. Although it seems like they never will be. If you sell me a 60-day license. And I can go hunt for 60 days, but technically I can only have 3 days worth in my possession. You know, if I've got 3 days worth in my freezer, technically I'm over the limit if I go hunting tomorrow. Um, I don't really agree with that. I think that a lot of birds, to go back to what you said earlier about birds getting wasted, there's going to be guys that are going to throw birds in a ditch. There's no doubt, no matter what. They're not real hunters. I would like to think that the majority of waterfowl hunters are not like that. I know some are. There's always going to be bad apples. But I also think and feel like some birds end up getting wasted, especially when people are on these out of town trips, because if you start traveling back across states or try to come across the border, now you're violating Lacey Acts, which is a federal law. So you're opening up this whole thing here that can cost you thousands and thousands of dollars, lose your license and all this for birds that were actually legally harvested. And I take issue with that. There's nothing that I can do about it to change it, obviously, but talk about it, and hopefully other people will too. But I understand that a lot of these laws are in place to protect the resource, and I have no problem with that whatsoever. I also think some of these laws, you about need a college degree to be able to waterfowl hunt, to know every law, especially when it comes to tagging waterfowl. Does he have to have a wing on him? Does he have to have a head on him? Can I drive him across if I hunt him? Because I live right on a border of South Carolina and Georgia. If a buddy invites me to go to South Carolina and I run the bird back across to Georgia, well, now you're crossing state lines, so now you got these Lacey Act violations that could come in. Come on, guys. We need to make these waterfowl laws a little bit more simplified, and I think some of these dated laws need to be adjusted. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the squeaky wheel got greased when they tripled the limit for possession, and that hadn't been that long ago. Okay, you know, now you can have 6 ducks a day, you can have 18 in possession, and the way it was explained to me back when was possession limit was for the traveling hunters. They go somewhere to duck hunt and they can bring back 12 ducks legally, okay, or 10 geese or whatever. Arkansas, they're notorious for setting up roadblocks the last day of the season at major junctions going back to Tennessee or wherever they want to do. And one of my game warden friends over there said, I got writer's cramp writing out citation because people hunting at a club the whole season, and when they start emptying their freezers, one guy had 72 ducks in his freezer, in his cooler. Okay. Well, we've hunted all year. Well, guess what? You know, you're 50-something ducks over. It just, I had a judge tell me one time on a speeding ticket, ignorance of the law is no excuse. But you got to cross your T's and dot your I's. And there's a different interpretation by probably every warden, good, bad, or indifferent. There's gray areas. Subject to interpretation. You know, I got a mallard black duck hybrid. Do I count it toward my mallard limit? Do I count it toward my black duck limit? Do I count it as an other? Okay. I mean,
Right.
I'd go to court and argue over the fact that it's not a mallard, it's not a black duck, it's an other. I mean, that's just one thing, but I mean, there's a lot of things that are hard to interpret. Okay. That are, the average person doesn't go out with intent to break the law, but some way, shape, or form, he'll do something that doesn't even make sense to him, or he doesn't even think about that he's broken the law. And people don't realize you get caught with a Lacey Act violation, you've got some problems, okay?
Absolutely.
Because the feds get involved. The last thing I want to do is get in a pickle with the feds involved, okay? Been there
Right.
once. Won't do it again. I learned real quick. But it just, there again, we're not giving waterfowl a fair shake, and we're not doing our homework, okay?
Right.
You know, people will pay, let's make it simple. People will pay $100 to go on a guided hunt, and it's a 10-bird limit. Well, that's $10 a bird, and they want their $100 worth, no matter what, no matter how. Or, hey, can we shoot the guide's limit? That happens all the time.
Right.
It just, you've seen it. I've seen it. Everybody's seen it. How many geese could we shoot out there in California if we really wanted to?
Who are you talking about? Those
been
little
there.
Aleutian geese?
Yeah, boy.
Oh, God. Yeah, I'm actually, not to get too far sidetracked, but I'm doing a podcast with Jeff on Friday. So
Are you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. He'll be on my podcast on Friday. I've been trying to get him for a little while, but he was, he does so many things. He's a biologist for the state of California. He's a commercial fisherman. He's the goose guide. I mean, he's a busy man. But when I reached out to him, he said, "Man, let me get this late season, this goose behind us here." And like he had a little bit of fishing trips he had to do, and he said, "We'll schedule a day." So we got it scheduled for Friday. So I'm really looking forward to. Yeah,
he
I'm
was
looking
out
forward
here
to
with
Ricky.
me,
And
too.
you sent me him.
Yeah, well, you were satisfied, I'm sure. But
Well,
he
God,
was
I'd
out
love
here
to
with
go
me.
back.
Yeah, he was out here with me 2 weeks ago.
Oh,
We
okay.
yeah, we went and did a cormorant depredation shoot down on catfish pond, a catfish farm. No telling how many ponds they got in Mississippi. And we stayed 4 days together, I guess. Stayed
How
here at the
about that?
house, took him back to the airport. I'm going back out there this year with my sons. They've never shot the Aleutian cacklers. And another good friend of mine from South Dakota. This will be my 4th trip with him. It's
He's
not
such a
that I
good guy.
well, he is. He's a very good guy, and he cares about the resource, and he he puts back more than he takes. But I just like the ease and the comfort of that hunt. It's something that my boys have never seen. You've seen it. You've got videos
I do. I
of
do.
once one commits, the whole farm comes. I mean, it's
Oh, I love it.
it and the Aleutian cackler is probably the greatest waterfowl success story there's ever been. They were declared extinct at one time. Extinct. That means Labrador duck. No more.
Zero. None.
Yeah.
Right.
But they found a little population on an island that didn't have the foxes. And now they have a spring season on them, 10-bird limit. And I've got a good friend that's going to do an article. He hunted with me out there this year with Jeff, and he's going to do an article for American Waterfowler, I believe, on the Aleutian geese. And it's
Okay.
not just the fact that they're fun to hunt and whatnot. They are a success story.
Absolutely. And one of the few nowadays, it seems like.
Well, they replenish themselves quite well. And like I say, Humboldt Bay National Wildlife Refuge out there and on further down, San Joaquin, the Sacramento Valley, that's their home. And golly gee, they have exploded from they were down to, what was the number? it was less than 20, maybe less than 50. About the only
That's
other
crazy.
waterfowl that that equates to the success of that bird is the Lazon teal from the Hawaiian Islands that was down to one female, one. And they've come back from the brink of extinction. And her nest, I'm sure people could care less about this, but her nest was destroyed by, and I can't remember if it was a gull or whatever, but she had enough eggs in her built up that she renested. And every Lazon teal in private collection and aviaries and released in the wild are from that one female.
About that. That is actually very interesting.
Well, there's a lot to duck hunting besides pulling the trigger. Okay.
Right.
The history of this, the history of that, uh, the, the number of birds, the number of days, the species. Each species has its own little niche in the biome of waterfowl. Okay, so you don't just target. You might as well shoot clay pigeons if you don't care about what species of duck you're hunting. I mean, you see all the time, well, we shoot shovelers, we stomp them in the mud, or we feed them to the dog, or whatever. I got guys that come to Arkansas and they want a mature shoveler as bad as a dead man wants a casket. They've got, a gorgeous bird.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
People, gadwalls are probably one of the most underappreciated ducks there are, and I think they're beautiful.
Absolutely.
But anyway, I would like for people to step back and give it some hard thought as to what they're hunting, to what they're shooting, and not just think of it as a clay pigeon. Okay.
Before we
got to do
wrap,
We got
go
to do
ahead.
something.
What were you going to say?
And we're the stewards of this sport. Okay, and that's what it is. It's a sport. All right. I tell people all the time, if duck hunting's a sport, then I'm an athlete. Yeah.
Heard that.
Oh, but it's just, I'm sad that my grandson and granddaughter, as much as they like to hunt, aren't going to see what I've seen. They're not going to have the opportunity to do what I've done. But they probably know more about ducks and duck species and their habits than a lot of people now that are your age.
Right.
They Reed won his division in the regional science fair here in Mississippi, and his project was how do ducks float, and he had it all figured out. With cotton balls dipped in oil that would float on the water, and cotton balls that weren't that would sink, and brought in the preen gland and all this. This is an 11-year-old kid, figuring all this out for himself.
Right.
We need more of that. We need more mentorship. Okay. I tell people my mentors are gone. Dr. Andrews, Johnny Riley, several guys and then I start thinking, well, hell, I'm 79 years old in July. Those were the ones I looked up to. Those were the ones that I learned from. Trial and error, you don't try something the second time if it didn't work the first time. Okay.
Right.
But Dr. Andrews, bless his heart, he taught me more about respect for the waterfowl and the history of it with Nash Buckingham, and it just, I look back now and think of some of the things he said and that have come to pass. for we're not going to have people like that. I think one problem is you get a group of, I'm not knocking them, all right, but you get a group of kids, teenagers, okay? They're going about it the wrong way. It's a numbers game to them. It's a competition with another group of kids, all right? They don't have the mentorship to do things the right way. You're going to have just as much success doing it the right way as you are the wrong way, but you're going to look back with pride over the way you did it. All right. So if I was emperor of the world, I would do away with robo ducks. I would make it illegal to duck hunt without a dog. Uh, the list goes on and on. But nowadays we've got aftermarket chokes and kryptonite loaded shotgun shells that will kill them at 100 yards. And 5 guys stand up out of a pit and take it to the plug at a flock of ducks at 70 yards, flare it off a robo duck, and they'll kill 1 or 2. But as a taxidermist, I see so many birds that have inflicted shot, that have broken legs that have healed, that have broken wings that have healed. I've even seen it in turkeys. But I just wish people to step back and take a deep breath and try to look at it from a different perspective. It's still going to be there, okay, but maybe not as fast and furious as they want, but it's still going to be there, and
Right.
you just have to be thankful for every day the sun comes up. I know that for a fact because I died in 2011. I think that's when
I
it
remember
was.
hearing the story. Yep, I remember hearing it.
Yeah, well, that gave me a hope. I wouldn't have met my grandkids if Patrick hadn't got me out of the pit into the hospital. There's a lot to be thankful for to get up and take a breath each morning.
Right.
There's a lot of people that don't have that opportunity. And Nash Buckingham put it best. He said, God doesn't let you know when your last day is going to be. So, good hunt, good weather, bad weather, you need to appreciate what you've gotten then and not what you wish you had gotten or what, you get up and the sun comes up. Boy, that's a great start. Or if you get up and it's raining, at least you get to see the rain. But you can't not appreciate the fact of life that, like I say, I crashed twice, I think, when they got me to the hospital. They broke 2 ribs and cracked my sternum, jumping up and down on my chest. They brought me back twice and were able to get a stent in my Widowmaker, my LAD artery. And when I tell people I've seen heaven, okay? Let me tell you what it looks like. It looks like you're floating. It looks like you're floating on pink and blue puffs, clouds of cotton candy. Same color as blue or pink cotton candy. And I would drift off into that totally without pain, and then they'd bring me back with the most excruciating pain I've ever dealt with. I seized and just about bit my tongue in half, okay? The 2 guys on the pump team in the ER, they came up and apologized to me for breaking my ribs and cracking my sternum, but they told me, you were fighting so hard to try to live that we weren't going to give up. And they didn't. This was on a Sunday afternoon, okay? And you can't be any more thankful than I am.
Right.
Okay. I just, the stars aligned. Just so many things went right to get me there. They got me there within the golden hour, and they were able to get the stent in once they got me halfway stable. Two other duck hunters that year had the same occlusion, and they died. I didn't. So, I count my blessings.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that story. You told that or a version of that on another podcast, and I don't remember who it was now. It's been several years ago, but I listened to it. But I will say, from a waterfowl hunter's perspective, I'm glad they saved you. I know your family's all glad they saved you. And I think waterfowl, you said that your mentors are gone and there's no more mentors, but you're the mentor now. People of your generation, and, I know did you tell me you were 79?
I'll be 79 July 3rd.
Okay, so 79. So there's probably not many 79-year-old gentlemen still getting after it. And I've got a lot of respect for you for doing that. Hell, I'll probably never even live to see 79, much less still be able to hunt. But you're the mentor now, and people like you, that is why I wanted to have you on, because I feel like even though you've talked on other podcasts and whatnot, we need people of your generation that's been hunting for as long as you have to tell your stories and give us, even my generation. I'm 38, okay? So I'm not a teenager, but I'm not 79 either, So I listen. You talk, I listen. But I'm hoping that as other young people see this, or maybe even if they're not young but new into waterfowling, because it seems like there's a lot of people that get into waterfowling now that are maybe their dad didn't raise them up waterfowl hunting. Now, my dad didn't. My dad didn't hunt at all. So I didn't start hunting until I was about 16, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was that kid that you're talking about because I didn't know any better. So I'm hoping that, a kid opens up this podcast or one like it, hears somebody like you talking with the experience that you have, and go, hey, listen, maybe they think about shooting that mallard hen next time one comes in and there's two drakes in a hen, and maybe let's just take that drake and let that hen go. Maybe let's think a little bit harder about making sure that we respect the resource. It's the things you do when people aren't looking that really counts towards your character, I think. So everybody can do the right thing when somebody's watching. What are you doing when they're not watching? What are you doing when nobody's there? Any of you guys that are listening to this, I hope that you take what Mr. Pitt said to heart. He's hunted, again, longer than most of us have been alive. He's been there, he's seen it, he's done it, he's got the t-shirt. He's been nothing but helpful to me. We were just talking about the Aleutian geese. He's helped me on some Mexico hunts that I've been on. Matter of fact, anytime that I have had a question about an outfitter or a specific bird I wanted or whatever, I've been able to reach out to Mr. Pitt via social media to begin with. And this has been going on for years now, and he's always been willing to help, always. So I've got nothing but respect for you. I'm glad for your wife, your kids, your grandkids, all your friends that you hunt with, and for the sport of waterfowling that they saved you back in 2011. And I wish you many more seasons. And I hope one day that our paths cross and I at least get to shake your hand. I bought a bunch of decoys from you one time years ago, but y'all weren't, when I drove to Mississippi to get them, you were gone. I think y'all were maybe at your club in Arkansas or something, but I drove out there and bought a bunch of snow geese that y'all sold. Actually, a buddy of mine bought them, but anyway, I drove over there and got them. The LLDC had that y'all sold. So I still haven't been able to shake your hand yet, but whenever I see you post or talk, I always stop and listen, and I encourage everybody else to do the same. And Mr. Pitt, I really appreciate you coming on and talking to me today.
Well, you're more than welcome. And Lord willing, our paths will cross.
That's right. That's right. Well, guys, you have been listening to Mr. Pat Pitt. I appreciate y'all tuning in today, and we will see y'all next week.